Friday. Megan, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Thank you. All right, so today's theme, whoa, is the cat coming in. Apparently, she
Sprout.
wants, yeah, Trout wants to chime in on this, as she does from time to time. Reframe Friday. So this is a bit of a wordy title, but I think you guys will get what we're going for here. So it is when you need to drop what got you to where you are. So, man, Trotus is going for it. So the idea being a behavior trait, a personality trait that you've maybe championed about yourself that really got you to a certain stage and served you very well in your life. And then you found the need to drop it for whatever reason. And I want to give a good analogy for this that I heard actually. I'll give the shout out to it's the guy that does like the Stoic, all the different Stoic stuff. His name's Ryan Holiday. He does like Stillness is the Key. He has a lot of really great books, and he framed it as this. So, these Dominican Republic and Cuban baseball players. They basically it's said that you have to like hit to get off the island. Like they have a lot of successful athletes come specifically to the sport of baseball off of those islands. And the whole idea is like swing as hard as you can at every pitch, and the whole idea is like, yeah, you're going to be like a home run hitter. And that works very well in the context of that group, that peer group that you're in. And you can be this like home run champion of like the island, and then that's what's going to get you off the island because they're going to look at you and go, wow, this guy has this like raw pure talent, and he's hit like
Mm-hmm.
50 home runs in the season in Cuba. So then he gets
Mm-hmm.
drafted, you come to the major leagues, and you swinging at every pitch and swinging for the fences against a higher skilled, world class pitching is going to make it so you're striking out more. You're going to have like a worse, you're going to be like, what happened? Like this worked for me before, but then you're going to have to refine and redefine, your skill set and your obviously
Mm.
the mentality about not swinging at every pitch, being more picky and choosy. So I thought
Yeah.
that was a really cool way of framing it
Yeah,
as far
totally.
as,
I
yeah.
love that.
So, and I know you had a really good example. This was a few weeks back from when we were doing in context of the show, so probably a good month and a half at time of recording here. But yeah, what is your example that you have in that
Yeah, I
in
was
that realm?
I was gonna change my example on you
Oh,
now.
please do. Yeah, please do.
Because you've heard my previous one so many times. But just when you were talking about that story, I brought something else to mind for how I
Cool.
was. So, in my like younger years, teens, even early adulthood, like into my early 20s, I would honestly classify myself as like a pretty aggressive person. Always quick to swing, always defensive. And it worked really well for me in my youth because of just the environment that I was in, because I was with a lot of other very defensive, kind of angry people, whether it was like in my peer group or at school. And it worked well for me because nobody picked on me. Nobody tried to mess with me. I could always defend myself. It was my way of keeping myself safe. And then I remember when I got into like my first really like serious and pretty like healthy relationship with my husband, I was still that way. And so
Mm,
I was like 25 at that time. And the first time that I was sort of like defensive or like aggressive like that, because I felt probably under attack in some way. So it was my way of keeping myself safe. He honestly stopped and turned to me and was like, "You can't talk to me like that." And I was like, "What do you mean I can't talk to you like that? I talk to everybody like that." But it was in that moment where he explained more in the sense of where it was kind of like, well, and if you're going to talk to me like that, like this isn't going to work because that's not respectful. And so many things came up for me in that moment, like shame and me being like, whoa, like no one's ever challenged me on this before. Or when they did challenge me, I would just get even more aggressive, right? But it made me have to stop and think about like, well, if this is going to be the end for us, like, what do I really want here? Well, I want to be in a relationship with this person. So then I have to drop this thing that has served me my entire life
mm.
and kept me safe. And I got to work on this. And so I had to completely overhaul my communication style.
Mm. Wow. Yeah, no, that's a really good one. Yeah. And I like how you mentioned, like, when there is that moment where you realize that it doesn't serve you very well, there is like a, holy crap, like there's some shame. It's almost like it not only stops you, it kind of dips you down a little bit, right? Where it's just like, oh shoot.
Yeah. I mean, there was lots of reflection in the moment too, to
Yeah.
be like,
Yeah.
okay, well, I'm not in that place anymore. I am safe. I'm
Mm,
not under attack right now. I'm not in like a hostile, chaotic environment anymore. I don't need to constantly be like on the defensive and come
yes.
out swinging at every single thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it was just a huge like pivotal moment for me to be like, whoa, like I'm not there anymore. This is not going to serve me anymore.
And how long was the process for you to reach that stage where you were comfortable with it, or are you still working through that in little? There's still like whispers of that come up.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't ever think that when we create change that there's like an end point into
Mm,
it really,
yeah.
because those types of learned behaviors like really run deep, and everyone has triggers whether they're aware of them or not. And so it's still something that I have to work on. And it's still something that I slip up with sometimes. And either my husband brings it to my attention, in a kind, loving way, or I notice it. I just did it the other night where I was feeling defensive. And it wasn't even something that I said because I've worked very hard on not being so reactive, but it was a face. Like I looked up at him with
Oh.
this like intentional, like angry eyes,
Ah. Yeah.
because when I used to do that, that was like the intention there was to intimidate, right? And then I was
Right.
like, whoa, like, am I trying to intimidate my husband right now? Like, this is
Mm,
insane.
yeah.
So it's like I have to catch myself still and then do
Mm,
the work to repair and go back to that place of reminding myself, whoa, like you're not under attack right now. You are safe. That behavior is not going to serve you in this moment.
yeah. That's that's worth mentioning. We'll just sidebar into this is like the because I think it's been said it's like 7% of communication is actual verbal, and there's like a
Mm-hmm.
huge percentage of what like body language is, right? And
Mm-hmm.
oftentimes your face gives it away, right? Or my face gives it away. I have a very hard time when I am practicing something and somebody will say, I'm thinking I'm doing a great job, but somebody could see it on my face and they mention it. I'm like, and then it just makes me feel like I haven't done a good enough job, right? So it's you lead with, if you don't have a poker face, if you're an emotional person, like I'm an emotional person, so I don't have a poker face.
Yeah.
So if something happens and I'm processing, I tend to kind of get like a little bit, my eye contact leaves and I kind of am like, processing it in real time. So I'm like looking down and, it's
Mm-hmm.
very apparent that something's going on in my head. And then if somebody
Mm-hmm.
brings light to it or, weighs in on what they think it is, and then who knows what happens after that, go red or something. And it's just
Mm-hmm.
like, man, it's just so, yeah, it's, that's a big part of it too, is to remember it's like, there is a lot, there's other ways that you can kind of, that you're communicating, the way. So I say that to say like, have that as part of your being open with, say, a partner or whatever it may be, or even with yourself, realizing that it's not just the words that you say, as important as they are. There's going to be some like the way you're holding your body. It's still going to be communicating. So
Yeah.
that's again that's the practice part. It's like when you're so focused on the way you're communicating verbally, that can also come off very tense because you're like thinking about it, and then people can
Yeah.
still think that you're being intense or super assertive,
Yeah.
aggressive, or So yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that as well. Um, yeah, I'm just thinking the one example for me that comes up that I'll bring up right away is the way I treated the guys in my band specifically. I remember, and even my friends, like in high school, we used to just take shots at each other, right? We were always like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, breaking balls as guys say to each other. And I don't know, I hated being on the receiving end of it. I used to have like there was me and three other guys that were like, but generally when I was in a band, it would be like three. It was like I have lots of dynamics of three in my past and even my current.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would always try and be the person that was like bulletproof. Like we'd make fun of the one guy and then like, oh, and then we'll convert and like we'll team up and we'll make fun of the other guy. And I just hated being the one guy that would be. So I'd do everything I could. I'd be like proactive on like making sure, okay, we'll like work on this guy for a bit, and then like before we know it, we can like turn it over to. So trying to kind of be manipulative with that, and I was just, and then I started getting, I was drinking by the time I was, like fairly regular. By the time I was like 18, and I viewed
Mm-hmm.
myself like I kind of was the band leader, like the de facto band leader, right, the lead singer and all that.
Mm-hmm.
So I would just use that energy to try and, yeah, I don't know, kind of like browbeat the other guys into like doing. I was just like it was a an unhealthy way of leading, like where it would just be a lot of like making fun of and under the expectation that I because I was the songwriter or whatever my view of it was. I think it was something along those
Mm-hmm.
lines like I'm bringing all the songs, I book the shows. You were lucky to be with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can also be a dick because what else are you gonna do, right? And then realizing by the time I was about 25, I remember I had a call with one of my like the drummer at the time, and it
Mm-hmm.
was like right as we were like everybody's getting dropped off. I'm like, Eric, I'm gonna call you later, and he knew there was some vibe at the band practice where I was unhappy with something that he had done,
Mm-hmm.
and then I could just see him like, fuck, just kind of put his head down and all that. And as soon as I called him, I'm like, so, I was like, so, like, how did you think band went? And he just lost it on me. And then I realized I'm like, oh man. And he was just like, I'm tired of you always like, he really like challenged back. And to the point I was like, oh wow, like, I'd never been just 100% both guns out, guns blazing, like, hey, this is how your behavior is affecting me. And I'm like, I'm sick
Mm-hmm.
of it basically, like F
Mm-hmm.
off. I was like, whoa. And then I realized I was like, holy shit, like this isn't actually how I want to be, perceived. And it was like a
Mm-hmm.
gradual thing, and it got to the stage where I was just like, yeah, I was just being a total dick. And then realizing and then immediately, it had an immediate impact on me as far as like, okay, no, it isn't me like being ever them drawn to me and they'd have no other option and I'm this great, virtuoso or whatever I thought at the time.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm lucky that my friends want to share a creation that I have with me. And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
it was immediate. I was like, holy crap. It was a very perspective shifting thing for me.
Yeah.
And you know what? And I credit that conversation or that, it was very one sided. The
Interaction.
interaction, I got chewed out, right? I got called out and I didn't like it, but I did like it in a sense. And that's what's led me to the way I've been able to interact with my current band. And we've been going for like 15 years now on that strength because I'm always incredibly respectful and thankful for these guys showing up. Very flexible with scheduling and all that instead of being like, no, band has to be the same time every day. And if you can't show up, don't come back kind of thing. Like being
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
very rigid with my like, perceived leadership versus now where it's just like almost maybe a little at times a little too much on the other side. So like I'm still figuring that out too, right? The overcompensation where you're like too much, so there's been a bit of that, but I very much credit that one interaction with the reason that we're like 15 years, there's kids in the mix now. Like Brendan's got three
Mm-hmm.
kids or about to have his third kid, and Greg with his kid, they're married and we're still able to do what we do
Yeah.
very much on the strength of that. So that was where I was like, okay, this defensive, fearful, kind of cocky, just very ego driven behavior that I thought
Mm-hmm.
was hand in hand with being a lead singer or whatever the heck I was thinking at the time. I mean, it was very substance infused at the time. And then to morph into how I much more like, would much rather myself show up
Yeah.
it was like a huge turning point for me and does factor in especially with the substances too because then it made me look at myself as far as like I'm kind of being a dick here, like I think I'm being funny but I'm really not. I'm
Yeah.
actually pushing these people away where I think I'm having this like edgy sarcastic um poking people's flaws kind of humor is not that it's not cool, and I didn't like being
Yeah.
on the other side of it, so that was yeah it changed my behavior instantly.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, honestly, I hear like the exact same theme in like both of ours is like how we were treating others with the intention to probably keep ourselves safe. So you're like
Yeah,
focusing on everybody else so nobody comes and focuses on you, right? And
100%.
then having someone essentially reflect it back to you, like, you can't treat me like that. Just
Yes.
like your bandmate, right? Like, this is
Yeah.
not going to happen. Or if
Yeah.
it is going to happen, then I'm going to exit.
Right.
And exactly the same with, my husband. It's like, I am so thankful that he said, like, no, this is, it's not going to
Yeah.
fly, even though he said it very lovingly and did say, like, I want to be with you, but like, I don't understand, not like this. Like, I don't understand what's happening here.
Yeah.
And same thing, like, because I was able to correct my behavior, like, we've been together 8 years now and have a family and have children and all of that. And I don't think that would have happened had I not have someone help me change.
Yes. And those are those tough things. And it for me, it's like, yeah, when we said, okay, there's a bit of shame involved, but it's like, yeah, it broke down that, helped me realize like I was acting out of fear for sure.
Yeah, same,
Right. And
same, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And it was a lot of like, exactly to your point. It's just like, don't bother looking over here because I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna put the attention on you. I'm gonna do whatever I can to, yeah. So no, it's an interesting topic, and it's I think it works really well with a big theme of recovery, sobriety, and just like reinventing yourself in general is coming to terms with this type of stuff, right?
Mhm.
And these can be very very hard because but when they happen and they will happen, those are your opportunities. In those moments you can make profound shifts, I think, as we both articulated on both our stories, where it's just like
Mhm.
it's like they aren't the little taps on the shoulder. It's like a big smack to that back of the head. And you're like, okay, right? For you, and
Yeah.
even for me, I think I don't put words in your mouth, but correct me if I'm wrong. It's like it penetrated so deeply, and then realizing what the fear is underneath of that, of like rejection or abandonment,
Mhm.
came up so very quickly with whatever the realization that like you can't be over tough or over defensive to the point that thinking that somebody's not going to leave you or leave the situation. You're thinking that you're like it's almost like this manipulation or something. For me anyways, it was a manipulation, and then realizing that like no, I can walk away from you right now, and I'd probably be better for it. I was like, whoa, having that realization. So the shame, and then the realization that the
Yeah.
actual fear in behind had been revealed to
Yeah.
me. I was like, oh
Yeah.
shit.
Yeah. And I think it's really important, like, just to kind of like clarify for listeners that, him taking the opportunity to kind of like reflect how he was feeling by the way I was essentially like speaking to him and treating him was not to manipulate me into being like submissive or changing my behavior to better serve him. And he presented it in a way that was just like, the choice is yours. Like, you don't have to change. But when I actually had someone reflecting back to me how I was behaving, it just gave me an opportunity to look inwards because
Mm.
nobody had given me that opportunity before. And so it was an absolute choice that I made to change my behavior in, taking it back to the beginning, seeing that the behavior was not serving me and that the way I was reacting was not appropriate to the situation at hand now because I wasn't in
Mm.
danger. I was safe. I had no reason to be that defensive or that angry at all. But I
Mm.
had just been functioning that way for so long that I didn't really know any other way. So there was some hiccups along the way as I worked to change, but it was a choice that I made, and I really do wish that people had pointed it out to me sooner in life. I've
Yeah.
had people point it out after the fact.
Yeah. Yeah.
I've had previous partners say, like, after we'd already separated, like, well, you kind of spoke to me like da 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 da, and it's like, it would have been helpful to say that like,
Yeah.
in the moment, right?
In the
But
moment.
lessons come when they come, and again,
Yeah.
you have a choice around how you want to respond to them.
For sure. For sure. And you know what? I think it's for a lot of people too. When you're saying it's like it takes a lot of on the other side of the fence. So for your husband or for the drummer in my band, it takes them being clear with their own boundaries, because boundaries are something that you're responsible for, and then because that's something that's internally affecting you. So then
Mm-hmm.
for you to be able to verbalize it in such a way that you are, hey, you're affecting, this is a boundary of mine.
Yeah.
That's where that comes, where that can be challenging for some people, because some people don't really know what their boundaries are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or there's just the take it, accept it, and then there'll be like some awkwardity, and then you just move on with your life, right? Like you just kind of keep going with it. So absolutely, that's the other side of it too. Is like somebody has to be aware of their own boundaries to be able to reflect it back to you. Otherwise, you're going
Yeah.
to be able to just run with that, like you say,
Yeah.
as long as it takes, really, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Sure.
totally.
Excellent. Good stuff here again. Thanks, Megan. Thanks everybody for listening, and we will see you in a week or a month's time. We'll see.